Before 28 years later, there was madness and survival. 2 decades ago, rage consumed the UK. Fast, brutal, unstoppable. One man woke up alone in a dead city. Another betrayed his family to save himself. From the haunting silence of London to the firebombed streets of District 1, this is how the nightmare began. Before you witness the next chapter, here's everything you need to remember from 28 days later and 28 weeks later in one heart-pounding recap.
One night in England, 3 well-meaning animal rights protesters slip into the Cambridge Primate Research Centre, intent on freeing chimpanzees subjected to disturbing footage of human violence. They photograph the cages until a frantic researcher intercepts them and lunges for the security phone. Overpowered, he pleads that the apes carry an aggressive, highly contagious pathogen, dubbed rage. But the intruders dismiss his warning and unbolt a cage. The liberated chimp instantly mauls a woman, sinking its teeth into her arm before another protester bludgeons it. As caged primates howl, the bitten activist vomits blood onto the floor and into a comrade's face. The scientist insists she must be killed, yet the virus acts quicker. She convulses, turns rabid, and attacks everyone present. 28 days later, bicycle courier Jim regains consciousness in an abandoned London hospital. He staggers through vacant wards, scavenges cola from a vending machine, and steps outside to find the capital silent, its streets littered with refuse and overturned buses. A discarded newspaper reports a mass British evacuation. A wall of missing person flyers confirms the catastrophe. Jim's search for life leads him to a church emblazoned with desperate graffiti. Inside, decaying corpses carpet the pews. When he whispers, "Hello," several bodies jerk upright, their blank stares locking onto him. A bloodied priest shambles forward, infected, and Jim instinctively swings his bag of canned drinks. Unfazed, the priest pursues him, and other infected pour from the doorway. Jim sprints through deserted streets until 2 survivors, Mark and Selena, ignite Molotov cocktails, incinerating the swarm and detonating a petrol station to cut off pursuit. Mark and Selena shelter Jim in an abandoned underground sweet shop. There, they explain that the rage virus escaped the lab and toppled Britain in mere weeks. The military collapsed, government vanished, and the living either fled or turned. Jim insists on visiting his childhood home, despite their certainty that his parents are dead. They agree, believing safety lies in numbers. At dawn, the trio traverses eerily empty boulevards to Jim's house, where he finds his parents' bodies, victims of a peaceful double suicide meant to spare them infection. Their farewell note reads, "Don't wake up." Grief keeps Jim awake, and while watching old family videos, he inadvertently attracts 2 feral intruders. Mark and Selena arrive, dispatch the attackers with brutal efficiency, and inspect each other for wounds. Discovering Mark's arm soaked with infected blood, Selena executes him without hesitation, warning Jim she would do the same to him. After collecting supplies, the pair spot flashing Christmas lights atop a nearby tower block and investigate. The lobby is barricaded with shopping trolleys, but they scramble upward. Screeches echo as infected follow, climbing the pile. Several floors up, a man in riot gear blocks their path, shouts his flat number, and fights off the pursuers with a riot shield and cricket bat. Inside the apartment, he and his teenage daughter, Frank and Hannah, welcome them warmly. Frank explains his rooftop rain barrels are empty and food is dwindling. Remaining here guarantees slow starvation. He plays a looping military broadcast promising safe haven near Manchester and the answer to infection. Selena suspects a trap, but Hannah's impassioned plea convinces the group to risk the journey in Frank's black cab. Driving through ruined London, they witness carcasses and burnt-out ambulances. A tunnel blocked by wrecks forces Frank to plow ahead, but a shredded tire strands them. Swarms of rats, fleeing oncoming infected, surge past. With no time for jacks, the adults heave the cab while Hannah swaps the wheel. They speed off seconds before the infected reach them. Hours later, at a countryside diner, Jim enters to siphon petrol and stumbles on a dead family. A zombified child attacks, and Jim, shaken, must kill him. The road trip grows strangely pastoral. Wild horses graze near an old castle where the group beds down. Under a starry sky, Selena concedes the day felt almost normal. and kisses Jim's cheek. Nightmares jolt Jim awake until dawn breaks, and they resume toward a Manchester skyline ablaze. The city of Manchester lies in ruins, smoke billowing from its charred buildings. As the group arrives to find no obvious signs of life, they navigate ruined streets until reaching the broadcast source, a military blockade, deserted and overgrown. While investigating, Frank accidentally dislodges a dead crow feeding on an infected corpse, and a single drop of blood falls into his eye. He stumbles back, already transforming. As Jim and the others panic, a squad of camouflage soldiers appears from the trees and guns Frank down. The commanding officer, Major Henry West, apologizes for the loss and invites them to his fortified mansion. At the compound, the soldiers provide food, water, and relative comfort. Jim, Selena, and Hannah try to recover from the trauma, though the atmosphere is tense. Jim is shown around by Sergeant Farrell, who quietly admits the virus is likely isolated to Britain. The rest of the world simply quarantined the island. West later reveals his true intentions. The answer to infection is rebuilding society, starting with procreation. He's promised his men female companions, and now intends to keep that promise. Selena is horrified, and when Jin objects, he is restrained and locked in a room with Farrell, who also opposed West's plan. Later that night, West orders Farrell's execution. As two soldiers lead them into the woods, Farrell tries to reason with them, but is killed. Jim manages to slip away into the trees. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the soldiers dress Selena and Hannah in gowns, preparing them for forced submission. Hannah, realizing what's coming, numbs herself with Valium. Selena remains sharp, trying to shield the girl as long as she can. Tim, having escaped, moves stealthily through the forest and stumbles on the crash site of a downed airplane, where he scavenges supplies. As a storm breaks, he returns to the mansion under cover of rain. Using guerrilla tactics, Jim disables the generator, plunging the estate into darkness. Amidst the chaos, he frees a chained, infected soldier the troops had kept for study, Maylor, who soon becomes a weapon of vengeance. One by one, the soldiers are ambushed, either by Jim or the unleashed infected. In the confusion, Jim locates Selena and Hannah just as West tries to flee. Jim and West clash, and West is eventually impaled and torn apart by Maylor. Covered in blood, Jim stares blankly, his feral expression momentarily convincing Selena he's infected. She hesitates, but doesn't strike. He whispers her name, and she realizes he's still human. The three escape the mansion in Frank's cab. Time passes. In the final scenes, Jim lies recovering in a countryside cottage, while Selena and Hannah sew together massive sheets to form a giant hello sign visible from the sky. A jet flies overhead, possibly signaling salvation. Selena calls out, "Do you think they saw us this time?" Jim opens his eyes, hopeful. The second film begins in a remote countryside cottage. Don and Alice Harris are hiding with a small group of survivors. Alice remains concerned about their two children, who were out of the country on a school trip when the infection first broke out. One evening, the group shares dinner. Though tension runs high, Karen still hopes for her missing boyfriend, Sam, who left days ago. Jacob, more pragmatic, argues that Sam is either dead or chose not to return. Suddenly, a frantic knock interrupts them. A young boy's voice cries for help, and despite hesitation from the others, Alice insists on letting him in. While the group tends to the boy, Karen gazes outside, hoping to see Sam. Instead, an infected man lunges at her, biting her arm. Jacob manages to pull her back, but she turns aggressive and attacks him. Don strikes her down with a crowbar to save Jacob. Chaos erupts as more infected breach the windows. Don tries to hold them off while the others flee. Alice and the boy retreat upstairs. Jeff, Sally, and Jacob make it to the barn, where Jeff heroically holds the door to allow the others time to climb to safety. Don kills one of the infected, but loses his weapon and rushes to find Alice. Meanwhile, the infected break into the barn. Jeff is overwhelmed. Sally freezes in horror at the sight of her husband being killed. And despite Jacob's efforts to save her, She's pulled into the horde. Dawn finds Alice in an upstairs bedroom, but she refuses to leave without the boy. She discovers him hiding in a closet, just as an infected bursts through the door. Dawn panics and locks himself in the bathroom, abandoning Alice as she screams for help. He climbs out the window and flees across open fields, chased by a horde. As he reaches a river, he finds Jacob prepping a boat. Dawn jumps in, but Jacob falls into the water and is dragged under. Moments later, Jacob resurfaces. Now infected, Dawn kicks him back into the river and escapes, his face a mix of horror and guilt as he looks back toward the window where he last saw his wife. 28 weeks pass with the infected believed to have starved. NATO, led by American forces, begins efforts to repopulate and rebuild Britain. A sniper, Sergeant Doyle, stands watch, casually chatting with helicopter pilot Flynn. At the airport, new arrivals are processed under the care of Major Scarlett Levy, who expresses concern when she sees children among the returning citizens. Among them are Tammy and Andy, Dawn and Alice's children. Scarlett performs Andy's medical exam, noticing his heterochromatic eyes. One blue, one brown, just like his mother's. The kids are taken to District 1, a first re-inhabited zone. There, they reunite with their father, Don, who now works maintenance in the district and lives in a well-furnished apartment. He explains they'll move into a more permanent home soon, but they cannot return to their original house due to security risks. When Andy asks about their mother, Don lies, saying she was too far gone when he found her, and he couldn't save her. Tammy tries to believe him, happy they at least have him back. That night, Doyle monitors the district through his sniper scope and sees the Harris family together. He smiles, content that people are being reunited. Meanwhile, Scarlett sits alone in her quarters, clearly uneasy. The following day, Andy wakes from a nightmare about their mother. He fears he'll forget her face, but Tammy reassures him. The siblings then sneak out of District 1, wandering through deserted streets. Doyle spots them and alerts his superiors, but the children are already outside, savoring their freedom. They stop at an old pizza place, where Tabby finds keys on a corpse and uses them to start a motorcycle. She drives them to their old home. They retrieve family belongings, including a hidden photo of Alice. Then, while searching the attic, Andy finds rotting food, drawings, and, shockingly, Alice herself. Overjoyed, he hugs her, though her embrace quickly grows intense. Moments later, soldiers arrive at the house. Andy breaks free and runs outside with Tammy. The troops surround the building and discover Alice back in District 1. Alice is detained and scrubbed in a decontamination chamber before being strapped to a hospital bed. Medical Officer Scarlett tries to question her, but Alice remains silent. When Scarlett pulls up her sleeve to take a blood sample, she notices a bite mark. Alarmed, she urges Alice to explain how she's still alive. Alice simply asks to see her children. John, stunned by the news of his wife's survival, meets Tammy and Andy in a holding room. The children demand the truth about their mother, but Don feigns ignorance. Claiming he's just as surprised, Scarlett, meanwhile, examines Alice's blood and discovers she's infected, but asymptomatic. She deduces that Alice is a carrier with natural immunity and might hold the key to a cure. Despite Scarlett's protests, General Stone orders Alice to be executed to avoid further risk. That night, Don enters Alice's isolation room. Crying, he begs forgiveness for abandoning her in the cottage. She assures him she still loves him, and in a moment of emotional weakness, Don kisses her. The infection transfers immediately. Don jerks back, blood spurting from his mouth. As Alice struggles against her restraints, he violently beats her to death. Now fully infected, Don turns on the guards and spreads the virus across the facility. Witnessing the outbreak, General Stone enacts Code Red. District 1 is placed under total lockdown. Tammy and Andy are still in the detention room with a soldier who reassures them everything is under control. But when he returns from checking the situation, he's infected. Scarlett arrives just in time and shoots him, then flees with the children. As chaos escalates, residents are funneled into a parking garage. In the confusion, Andy is separated from Scarlett and Tammy. Pushed by the frantic crowd, He retreats to a quiet corner as the power fails and darkness falls. Suddenly, a fire exit door rattles. Andy and another man approach as an infected Don bursts in. Don attacks the man, vomiting blood into his face. The infection spreads rapidly. Andy scrambles onto a car, shielding his ears from the screams below. Eventually, people force the garage doors open. Soldiers attempt to contain the infected, but in the panic, they struggle to distinguish between the living and the infected. Scarlett and Tammy manage to escape the carnage. Facing total collapse, General Stone issues a brutal directive. Shoot every person, infected or not. Scarlett grabs a radio and begs the military to locate and extract Andy. Andy, meanwhile, escapes through the ventilation system. Outside, he's spotted by Sergeant Doyle, who has just received the order to shoot all civilians. Doyle hesitates, unable to pull the trigger on a child. At that moment, a man named Sam signals Andy to hide in a nearby warehouse. An infected charges, but Doyle intervenes and saves Andy. The infection consumes the military forces. Doyle is forced to shoot one of his fellow snipers, sparing him a more gruesome death. Inside the warehouse, Andy reunites with Tammy and Scarlett. He tells them that Don has turned. Tammy is heartbroken. Sam, confused and terrified, asks why soldiers are shooting everyone. Scarlett explains that once containment fails, the army resorts to extermination. As they discuss options, Doyle joins them, abandoning his post to help survivors flee. He informs them that Flynn, the helicopter pilot, plans to bomb District 1 and can extract them if they reach Regent's Park. They flee through the streets, but a sniper opens fire. The group hides in an alley. Scarlett is hit in the leg but manages to bandage it. Doyle, noticing the sniper is erratic, asks Sam to help him locate the shooter. Sam refuses in fear. Andy, seeing no other choice, runs across the street to draw fire. Doyle uses the distraction to take out the sniper. With danger still looming, the group scales a security wall and heads for safety as jets roar overhead, firebombing the city. In the distance, Don watches silently as a photo of his family burns. As the firebombs rain down, Doyle and the group take shelter in a tunnel. A wave of flames approaches fast, forcing them to sprint out moments before the inferno consumes the entrance. Back in the command center, General Stone watches surveillance footage. Some infected have survived the firestorm and are breaching the barricades. By morning, the surviving group rests briefly in Regent's Park. Andy quietly asks if their mother could still be alive. Tammy gently says no. Later, Doyle confides in Scarlett that Andy had been marked as a target, but he couldn't bring himself to follow through. Scarlett tells him that Alice's immunity may have been passed to the children, making Andy and Tammy critical to discovering a cure. She urges Doyle to protect them at all costs. Flynn radios Doyle, warning that infected are nearby. The group prepares to flee, but they're too late. The infected are closing in. Doyle orders everyone to hide in the grass. Flynn arrives with his helicopter. Doyle pleads for Flynn to help evacuate the children, but Flynn refuses, hesitant and unsure. Suddenly, Sam panics. Desperate, he grabs onto the chopper's landing gear, begging Flynn to save him. As Flynn hovers low, the infected charge. Thinking quickly, he tilts the rotor blades downward, using them to mow through the attackers. The gruesome maneuver clears the area. The survivors make a run for it. Sam, now covered in infected blood, falls from the helicopter and is left behind. Flynn, frustrated and overwhelmed, shouts over the radio for Doyle to get to the stadium. He refuses to risk rescuing anyone else. As the group runs toward the park exit, Andy stumbles. Doyle turns back, firing at the infected to protect him. He radios Flynn, begging him to help. More infected appear, and the group is forced down a road suddenly filled with nerve gas. They dive into a nearby van, quickly sealing the vents and covering their mouths. Infected slam against the windows until the gas kills them off. Scarlett tries to start the vehicle, but the engine stalls. Outside, soldiers in hazmat suits begin incinerating corpses with flamethrowers. Knowing what's coming, Doyle tells Scarlett to drive once the van starts. He exits, pushing the vehicle from behind. As the engine roars to life, the soldiers turn their flamethrowers on Doyle, engulfing him in flames, while the others watch in anguish. Scarlett drives the children through winding streets, avoiding the rolling gas clouds. Suddenly, an Apache gunship opens fire on their vehicle. She swerves into an underground subway entrance just in time. Inside, she grabs Doyle's sniper rifle and leads Tammy and Andy on foot. They descend into dark corridors, where Scarlett uses the night vision scope to guide the children safely. As Tammy and Andy head down an escalator, they slip and disappear from view. Scarlett chases after them and is ambushed by Don, who strokes her with the rifle, killing her. Tammy, hearing the silence, picks up the rifle and peers through the scope. She sees Scarlett's lifeless body nearby. Andy is wandering the platform, calling for help. Don emerges from the shadows and violently tackles his son, biting his neck. Tammy arrives just in time. As Don rushes toward her, she shoots him without hesitation. Crying, she approaches Andy, afraid he's turning. Andy runs away and collapses on the tracks. Tammy checks his eyes. One is bloodshot, just like Alice's. He's infected, but like his mother, he's immune. The siblings reach the stadium where Flynn is waiting. He raises his weapon, asking about Doyle. Tammy steps in front of Andy and says it's just the two of them now. After a pause, Flynn agrees to fly them out. They board the helicopter, staring down at the scorched, ruined landscape below. 28 days later, Flynn's helicopter lies abandoned. A group of infected charges up from a tunnel and emerges into the city streets of Paris.